How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to our VMware NSX-T series where we're focusing on the data center lab build portion. As you can see, my uploads have completed. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick off the installation of the Windows Server deployment, and then I'm also going to get the Linux VM configured for VMware tools. So by the end of this video, we'll have two virtual machines, one Linux, one Windows, both completely installed, ready to go, and then I will go through and configure DHCP scope on the routers for both, and then the idea is to get the virtual machine squared away to where we can convert them to a template so we can redeploy from a golden image. So I'll talk about more of that in detail. So let's go ahead and I'm going to disappear for a minute. So over here on cluster 1, I am going to right click here and say new virtual machine. This is going to be creating a new virtual machine, but there's a bunch of different options that you could use, obviously. Click on next. We're going to call this Windows. It's going to be in DC1, and we're going to be leveraging leverage DRS, Distributed Resource Scheduler, to place the VM on a host with available resources. I'm going to click next, and I'm going to put this in SAN 2. I'm going to click on next. 6.7 and later with virtual machine hardware version 14. And it just so happens to be that this is the version, the Windows, and it's going to be Server 2012. Click next. So this is what VMware recommends as the requirements for any Windows VMs. So I'm actually going to expand the hard drive, and I'm going to set this guy to be thick provision to thin provision. And then the VM network, I'm going to transfer that to be DC1 comp Windows. So that one is now squared away. Alright, so the client device for the DVD, I'm going to go to data store ISO file. I'm going to click on SAN 2, and in there we'll see Server 2012 R2. Click on OK, and then click the little button to check it to make sure that it actually does connect when we go do it. Now I'm actually going to pause briefly. I'm going to pull up secure CRT for both of my routers. I'm going to do a show run pipe section DHCP, and I'm going to do a show IP interface brief. So I need to go underneath here, interface gig 2.101, encapsulation.1Q101. IP address here is going to be 172.31.101.1/24. IP address there. And then we're going to say standby 101 IP is going to be 172.31.101.254. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up Notepad real quick. Go ahead and I'm going to take this config right here, paste it here, and then I'm going to do a do show run interface gig 2.101. I'm going to grab, and then it's going to be interface gig 2.101 IP OSPF 1 area 0, and then I'll do router OSPF 1 passive interface is going to be gigabit 2.101. Do show run interface gig 2.101 and do show run pipe section OSPF. So I'm just going to take this config right here, paste it into Notepad, and I'll just clean up the config. So that config is going to look something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and 101 to 101. This is going to be Windows. Network is going to be 101. Default gateway, default router will be 101. And then I'm going to say this is going to be 102 or 101.2. And then I'm going to go ahead and configure that. So that'll be the config that I drop into CSR2. I'm going to save that config. I'm going to jump over to CSR2 and paste. Config T. Oh, I see why. Let me go ahead and adjust that. We'll pull the end out. The end is what did it. If you press end, it'll automatically take you out of global config. Just like that. Okay. So now we've got that guy going for us. Do show standby brief. Perfect. Good to go. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to go do is, now that the CSRs have been configured, I'm going to go ahead and click on next and then finish. So now the VM will get created. So the VM has now been created. Now I have to go power it on and interact. Now the drawback is there's some, when you're interacting with the VMs for especially Windows boxes, they are a little, they can be finicky to play with. So I'm going to press the green button to the green triangle to start it, the green play button, and I'm going to say launch web console. And this is going to come over here and help launch the console. The Windows, it's going to start loading the files. Now, this is in a nested environment, right? So we are at this point right here. We're at this point right here where we are nested virtual environment, right? So we are installing a VM on this particular host right here, and we've configured the CSRs to do all the cool stuff that they need to do. That's where we're at right now. So this is going to take some time for it to do its job. Now, the drawback to this is when we're going through and interacting with the VM after it's been installed, the one thing we're going to have a problem with is that we're going to have to do a bunch of keyboard functions in order to get the job done. We won't just be able to click around inside of it because VMware tools won't be installed. So I'm going to walk you through what I do in order to get that done, and then we're going to go through and reboot it, and then you'll be able to log in and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and notice how the mouse is not available. So you literally have to tab through, tab down to next, spacebar on next. You can tab back and forth, but as long as install now is highlighted, as you can see right there, spacebar on that. And after a couple of moments, you'll be able to start interacting with the install part of it, where we're going to, license and choosing. So I'm arrowing down to server with a GUI, tabbing down to next, spacebar on next. And then we're going to press the spacebar on I accept the license terms, then tab to next. Then we're going to arrow down to custom install Windows only, spacebar on that to select it. And then I have to tab through to next for the 40 gig hard drive. Spacebar on next, and then that's literally all we have to do. So we're just going to let the install do its thing. I'm going to jump back over here to Linux. I'm going to power on the Linux VM, and I'm going to install VMware tools and show you guys how that process works. It's actually pretty straightforward, but I'm also going to have to launch the web console and show you guys how that works. I will show you how to work the remote console at a later point in time, but that's essentially another option you have, and the remote console will give you almost like a putty window that you can move around the screen and interact. It gives you a little more functionality. So I'm going to pause until that is done doing its thing. Okay, so now that our Linux VM is now powered on, we're going to go ahead and launch the web console. And we're going to go ahead and log in. Just like that. And the intention is to go ahead and install VMware tools on it, which is going to be a pretty straightforward process. I'm going to try to remember to include the link to the documentation that helps you do it. So new version of Ubuntu is, no, I'm going to say don't upgrade. I have no idea how big the upgrade is. So I've only got a 1 megabit internet connection on the virtual machine, so I don't want to waste a bunch of bandwidth on doing that. So, okay. So, now that we're at this point, the quick way for us to go through this would be to come over here to this guy, and we're going to go to Actions, Guest OS, and then say Install VMware Tools. Mount the ISO or the ISO for that. We're going to click on Linux 1, and then we get this. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on VMware Tools, right click on it, and say extract to, and I'm going to choose the desktop as the destination. I'm going to say desktop and click on extract. So it's going to go ahead and extract the files to the desktop, and then I'll show you guys how to begin the install process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. VMware Tools is there, so I'm going to right click here, go open terminal. Terminal opens up, so we're going to go ahead and type in cd/desktop, or is it /desktop? /desktop, and then it's going to be VMware Tools distributed. Hit the enter key, and now if we do an ls, we're going to have VMware Tools. So we're going to type in sudo, or actually it's, let me go pull that up real quick. It's under VMware, and it is down at the bottom here. It's DCV. It's install VMware Tools in a Ubuntu virtual machine. So I'll pull this up. If you scroll down here, we've gotten to this point. We're going to type in cd desktop. So it is, okay, sudo /VMware-install.pl. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. So it's going to be sudo /VMware install.pl. Hit the enter key, and then we're going to have to type in the password to go into sudo. There we go. So now it says we're going to go ahead and start installing. Do you want to proceed with the installation? Yes. And so I'm literally going to take all of the defaults while it's doing that. It takes a couple minutes depending on the underlying capabilities of the VM. Okay, so it took a couple seconds for that to happen, so I'm just going to continue hitting the enter key as we're going through all this, just to make sure everything works the way that we want it to. I'm literally not reading any of this, I'm just hitting the enter key, because a lot of it I've gone through before and I just know what needs to happen. So there is some specific variables that you need to enable, but we pretty much have done that already. And as soon as I get this process started, I'm going to go back over to the Windows box, which is ready for us to interact and set the password on. Okay, so there's a couple other ones. A VMware host guest file system allows. Do you want to enable that feature? Nope. VM block enables dragging and copying files between hosts and the guest. No. Would you like to enable VMware automatic kernel modules? Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and again just take the defaults. So I believe this is one of the last things that it does before it does the installation. And then we should be in pretty good shape. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to go over to Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and type in the password that we're going to need. And I'm going to go ahead and actually that does not line up. So we're going to, there we go, and finish. So this is still working. Go back to Windows. We're going to go ahead and send Control-Alt-Delete and type in the password. So you have to click in it. Maybe it's hung up. There. Now we'll be able to log in. So this will be one of the last steps, and then, okay, now it's starting to do its thing. It's just taking a while for it to work. So this process right here is going to be the part that's a little bit more difficult to do, because you have to do a lot of tabbing and arrowing around in order to get VMware tools installed. So I'm going to pause until we're ready to go. Okay, now that we are logged in and everything's good to go, you'll notice that my the mouse is non-existent. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to hit the start menu, and then I have to type in, which is actually kind of funny, this PC, hit the enter key. That brings this guy up. So now the other thing that I have to do is I have to go over here to Windows, and I have to go to Actions, Guest OS, and install VMware Tools. Mount it, go back to Windows, and then we'll see that VMware Tools will show up. So what I have to do now is I have to do this guy. Let's see here if I can. Okay, so I'm gonna have to cheat, and so it's going to give me a hard time. So let me, yeah, see, it won't, because I'm using a using the web console, it won't let me do what I need to do. So there's a fix for this. I can go in and install the remote console, the VMRC. It's not already installed on this virtual machine, so there's not going to be a way for, so actually what I can do is I'll click back inside and I'll type in this PC, I'll pull it up, and then I'll tab down. I'm trying to figure out a way if there's a better way of doing this. I'll arrow over, so I've been tabbing one more time. Actually, oops, I went too far. And then I'm arrowing down and arrow over to VMware Tools and hit the enter key. And then it starts to do the VMware install for tools. So this will take a couple of minutes for it to actually do its job. So we'll just give that some time. As you can see in the lower right hand corner, I do have internet access and all that good stuff that goes along with it. So this will take a couple of moments for it to do its thing. And then once it does it, I'll have to, there we go. As long as nothing jumps, it should pull it up. Let's see, it won't let me. Yep, I have to. Can I? Yeah, so I'm going to have to install the VMware Tools console because I am not gaining any headway with. And that'll be a pop-up that happens on the local computer right here. Click on next, next, next. Going to uncheck those and install. That'll take a couple moments, and then we'll be able to interact with the installer on the virtual machine. So what I'll do is click on finish. I'm going to click back over on here, and I'm going to say launch remote console. I'm going to click in here. It says always allow VCSA to do that, and then open VMware Remote Console. So we're going to launch VRC. We're going to always trust this host with this certificate and connect anyway. So it's going to basically punch a hole through, and now I should be able to, I won't be able to mouse around, right? The mouse is still garbage, but at least now I'll be able to give direct access to the connection. So I'll be able to come over here, click on next, next, and tab through to next, and then spacebar for install. So that's what you basically have to do in order to get that to work. So VMware Tools will install, we'll reboot Windows Server 2012, and I'm going to make a couple of adjustments before I power the box off and make it a golden image, and then redeploy VMs from that. Now going back over here to so you have to Control Alt to break away from it. That should be the key sequence. It's Control Alt, sorry. So if you're inside of it, you can Control Alt to break the mouse away from the console and then interact with everything around it. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to click on Linux, and right now Linux has high CPU, and if we look, we have an IP address 172.168.100.13, and it's Linux 1 virtual machine. So that means that VMware Tools did the job it was supposed to and was able to log in and all that good stuff. Now VMRC, the VRC is now done. I'm going to have to go ahead and click inside and then click finish, and then yes, we're going to go ahead and allow it to restart, because until we do, we're going to have really bad experiences with the virtual machine. Now the reality of that, ladies and gentlemen, is that can be fixed pretty easily with newer versions of Windows. I'm just using Server 2012 R2. So because it's a very small platform and it's a server-based OS. So I could do this with Windows 10. That would also work. But for right now, I am leveraging 2012 R2. So I'm going to pause until the VM is rebooted. Okay, so Windows has rebooted. So if I come back over here, notice my experience looks better. I'm going to send Control-Alt-Delete. Go ahead and get out of the way. Click inside of here, set the password, and then we'll be able to log in. Now if we jump back over here to vCenter server and click on Windows, we have an IP address, and DNS hasn't populated yet, but it will here momentarily, and we're going to be in good shape. So I'm going to go back over to Windows, even though I actually prefer this console over the web-based console, but because now that this is installed, you can actually stretch this out to whatever you want. It'll automatically resize. It actually resizes the back console too, if you notice that. So you can give yourself a full console. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to, you could actually minimize this completely, and you could, this is going to be your remote console for your server. This is absolutely no different than having an RDP window pulled up. You have a lot of your capabilities. You can change virtual machine settings from here, so on as power, removable devices, so on and so forth. So you have a lot of capabilities here that you normally wouldn't. So we have all that. So now that that's in shape and we're squared away, that is basically how that comes into play. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click here and go to Properties. I'm going to go to Navigation, Notification, Air Customize, and turn system icons on or off. I'm going to turn the clock off because nobody cares. I'm going to click on OK. And the volume, I don't need volume. These are virtual machines, so it's not going to matter. Click on OK. Click on OK. Close that out. Alright, and so everything else is in good shape. So if I go to local server, we're going to see that the VM is activated. I don't really care about the time zone. I'm going to change the time zone only because of the fact that it does bother me that it's on the wrong time zone. I'm going to go to US time, Central Time, US and Canada. And then IE Enhanced Security, I'm going to turn that off just like that. Now, while I'm here, one of the things we're going to be doing later on, once we get through at least the initial part of the deployment, getting some basic routing up and running with NSX-T and things like that, we're going to be using these VMs, these Windows VMs, to deploy specific feature capabilities like web servers and things like that. So if I wanted to, I could go in here and go Manage, Add Roles and Features, come in here, go Next, Next, and then I can come in here and turn on, for example, Web Server, IIS, Internet Information Systems. So there's a lot of different capabilities that I could turn on and test as I'm going through. For right now, I'm not going to do that, only because of the fact that I don't need to. So when I go to do demonstrations, I will walk you through how to do a basic install of certain things, and then we'll go from there. So with that being said, that's basically all I wanted you guys to see in this video. So we have both of our devices good to go. So I'm actually going to go to Start menu. I'm going to go to Power and Shutdown. I'm not going to give it a reason. I'm just going to close this guy out, minimize this, pull up this guy again here, close this guy out. This guy's already good to go. Since VMware Tools is installed now on these VMs, what I can do is I can go to Actions. Let me go ahead and get out of the way so you guys have more screen space. I can go to Actions. I can go to Guest OS. I'm sorry, Power. And then these right here are going to be direct power. Down here is where you're leveraging VMware Tools to reach into the operating system and do something with it. So I'm going to say shut down Guest OS. So Windows is down, Linux will be down. So what I will be able to do now is once it's down, I'll be able to right click here and I'll say right click, go to template, and I'm going to say convert to template. Yes. So we're going to call it'll be the Windows template. I'm going to click on Linux. We're going to just say reset to green. So he's not quite shut down yet. Now he is, because the little green play button is gone. I'm going to right click here, template, convert to template. It's going to be Linux 1. I'm going to say yep. I'm going to go over. Now you'll notice that there's no VMs here. You have to click on this guy right here. VMs and templates is what this is called. If you hover over it, it tells you VMs and templates. So you have Windows. And you have Linux 1. Now Linux 1 was a discovered VM. Let me take just a brief moment. What does this mean? Discovered virtual machines versus this guy. Discovered means that this was already running when this ESXi host, the VM was already there, had already been created prior to this host being added, or the host that this VM was sitting on prior to it being added to vCenter. So I can actually move this to DC1, and then it'll get moved down here. So I'm actually going to rename this. I'm going to come down here and rename. I'm going to take Linux 1 away from it and just click OK. So now it's been renamed. So now what I get to go do is I can go on, say, this cluster. I can right click here and say new virtual machine. Actually, let me go ahead and start that over again and get out of the way. So I can right click here, go to new virtual machine, and then I can say deploy from template, next. Under data center, because I don't have a content library built yet, expand DC1, click on Linux. Click on OK. I can type in Linux 1. Click next. It's going to ask me where am I going to deploy this. I'm going to say cluster 1 because there's 3 hosts in cluster 1. Click next. I'm going to say SAN 1. Same format as source, but I'm going to automatically say thin provision. Click next. I'm going to say customize this virtual machine's hardware and power on the virtual machine after creation. And then I'm going to come down here, and the data store ISO file is already disconnected. So that's good though. I don't want it connected. I can change this to be client device if I wanted to, and then click on next and then finish. And it's going to go ahead and create a virtual machine. It's going to clone it. So it's going to take the Linux template, convert it from a template into a virtual machine. That'll take some time. It usually takes a few minutes for it to do its thing. Even in the real world, it takes some time. But once that process is complete, we'll have a virtual machine and it'll get powered on whatever host. So right now it's not going to tell me what host until it's actually been created. Once it's created, you'll see a host show up right where my mouse is. I'll tell you which host it's residing on. And then you can repeat the process over and over and over again for as many VMs as you want. So that's essentially what we're going to be doing. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me in this video, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next video.